Hi everyone, this is Nia and today I'm going to be making something simple. I haven't made these simple small abstract doodles for a while, so I decided to make one spring themed with bright pastel colors. So let's get straight to the colors. This is Sepia by Holbein, Quin Red by Daniel Smith, Cobalt Green by Holbein, Buff Titanium by Daniel Smith, Titanium Gold Ochre by Schmincke, Chinese White by Holbein. I'll also be using colored pencils. These are all by Albrecht Dürer. So the first color is burnt carmine, second is medium flesh, third is burnt ochre, and lastly is sap green. I'm also going to be using bleed proof white by Dr. P.H. Martens for some opaque white color. You can also use a white pen, and my Sakura Micron pen in sepia with the weight 005. This is just going to be a very simple doodle. I'm just going to start out by painting ovals. And here I used a mix of Quin Red with a little bit of titanium gold ochre. You can always play with the ratio here and play around with the colors that you have on this palette and try to come up with different variations by using different combinations of these colors in different ratios, so you can create different hues varying in values and such. So with these three ovals that I've already painted, I basically use the same colors, which is titanium gold ochre, Quin Red, and also Chinese white to lighten some of the hues. But because I played around with the ratio, the colors came out differently. But because the palette is limited, the colors are harmonious and is consistent with each other. For the fourth and fifth oval, I still use the same base color, which is basically titanium gold ochre and Quin Red, but here I added a little bit of sepia to mute down the color. So now you can see that the orange turned into more of a brown tone, but it's still nice and pastel, and the pink is also a little bit muted. Now I'm going to start introducing the cooler hues, which is the cobalt green. And first I just mixed it with Chinese white, and for the second one I'm going to start mixing it with a little bit of titanium gold ochre to create more of a greenish hue. For all of these ovals, I'm using like medium to almost a heavy load. This way when I switch colors, the previous oval is not completely dry and it leaves a little bit of space for the colors to mingle and travel across each other, which I find make the composition look a bit more dynamic and loose. Sometimes I like to repeat color mixtures, but I do try to make sure that all the ovals touching are different. So this means the oval on the left or the right, top and bottom of every oval is a slightly different color. You can also intentionally make colors travel across each other. So here, as the orange is still slightly wet, I intentionally added a little bit of green to travel across. You can also experiment by adding different colors into the ovals that you've previously painted and try to play around with different color combinations, so one oval might have 2 colors or even 3. For the color mixing, sometimes you don't even have to mix a specific color. Here, as you can see, I just used whatever I already mixed on my palette and mixed them all together. This one happened to create a brown, which is somewhat expected. It came out a little bit light, so I added more sepia. So I think from here on, I'm pretty sure you guys understand my method of color mixing for this doodle, and I'm just going to keep making different colors and trying different combinations to fill the page. You can use these same colors if you would like to, or even experiment with your own color combinations. As an example, this one I tried to experiment a little bit, so after painting on the light brown, I tried to add more sepia on the side, and I also added a little bit of an orangey pink tone, and see how it mingles with each other without trying to control the paint too much. At this point, I thought about how I've been painting the ovals placed horizontally, so sometimes the top and bottom of the oval isn't touching. So here I tried to experiment again by painting sideways but also downwards at the same time. So when I paint underneath the previous oval is still a little bit wet, so the paint can travel both sideways and also downwards at the same time. While doing this though, it is important to still try to keep the same size for the ovals just to make it consistent for the composition. It's a little bit harder to keep the same size when we're always thinking of making sure it touches each of the edges. I think it's just something that we would subconsciously do, so try to keep that in mind if you're trying to experiment with this approach. So far, the colors that we have here are quite light, but I just want to try something different. So I tried a really dark sepia tone here and see how it works with each other. I feel like even if the value is very different with the others, because other colors contain a little bit of sepia in some of the ovals, it still works well with each other, and I actually like the fact that I can play around with the doodles on top of the ovals with varying values. This way, as an example, I can doodle on top with white, and the white or the outline of the doodle will show through more than if I were to use white on top of the lighter colors. This is a choice though. You can always keep a consistent value all throughout and use soft colors, or try to mix and match. For the last two ovals, I'm just going to create something a bit more muted for a bit of variation. And after this, I want to make sure all the ovals are completely dry so I can start doodling on top of them. Once everything is completely dry, you can choose any mediums you'd like to doodle with on top of these ovals. I'm going to paint and draw with the supplies that I showed you earlier, but you can also use other mediums like oil pastel or colored pens and things like that if you have access to a lot of different mediums. It's completely up to you what method you want to use to doodle. Personally, I like to do as I please and jump around from place to place. So as an example, here as I'm holding the pen, I also have other ideas to draw, like other plants that I would like to draw with this pen, but I don't want to group them together, so I just intentionally scatter them around the page. This is optional though, you can use any method as I mentioned before, so if you would like to group them together or if you would like to draw horizontally or vertically, that's completely up to you. Notice that for some of the doodles, I also like to draw or paint over the edges of the ovals, and that's okay, you can choose either way. Another way you can vary your outlines is to play around with textures. So here I want to depict a round fluffy flower, which is like a belly button flower. So I used dashed vertical lines to create the round shapes instead of just drawing circles. So that's basically it. Personally, for mine, I like to combine abstract shapes, simple patterns, and outlines of things I'm comfortable drawing freehand, like flowers and leaves. So I'm just going to fill the rest of the ovals with these elements and figure out ways to space them and vary the elements along the way. You can leave the outlines as is or paint them later. And I'm also going to draw using different mediums like colored pencils as well, instead of just using the pen. Of course, though, you can also doodle with pen only on the ovals if that's the only medium you have access to, or even if you just like the look of it. So from here on, I'm not going to voice over much. I hope you guys just enjoy watching this process and maybe even doodle with me side by side with some relaxing, soft background music. I think I forgot to mention that my pencil is a watercolor pencil, which means I can activate the colors with water and turn it into watercolor instead. So here, as I'm drawing and filled in the shapes of the leaves, I also end up wetting the drawing, and this will just soften the texture of the pencils. And that's basically it. Here I'm just going to add some final finishing touches where I feel I can still fill in the space, and that's basically it for this abstract spring colored doodle. Like usual, all the list of tools as well as my social media links will be in my description box. If you guys are still here, thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye!